Welcome, Jason. Thank you for being with us again today.
Vince, what's going on, man? And hello, everybody. ARA, what's going on in crazy 2020?
Yes, it is. It is. But as we continue to forge through it, we're learning new things about ourselves and about those around us. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. But we're growing. Everybody's growing in a new way, preparing for that. I'm going to say it as much as you're tired of hearing it, the new normal, right?
That's right.
So last time we were together, we talked about the Pentagon of peak performance. And I was wondering if you wanted to give a quick recap on the Pentagon of peak performance, and then we're going to move in to the next to the content for this session, which is all about leading others. So have at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, now more than ever, I mean, it's so critical to have balance in our lives, and balance isn't this perfect thing. So many people think, well, I've got to put equal amounts of time into each area of my life, and that creates balance. It's not really true. Life isn't quite as clean and neat, especially in 2020, where every time we turn around, there's something new happening. So the Pentagon of peak performance is 5 key areas that you can lead yourself and make sure that you're putting some time and effort into those areas. And it enables us to be better prepared for the ups and downs of life that are going to come our way. And that's one of the biggest things. So physical leadership being the bottom level, we want to take care of ourselves physically, sleep, nutrition, and fitness, move your body. Number 2 is mental leadership. So what are we doing to continue to educate ourselves, to continue to challenge our beliefs, look for mentors, look for people who can give us different views of the world. Number 3 is social leadership or emotional leadership. How do we manage our emotions? How do we manage the ebbs and flows, our anger, our happiness? As leaders, it's really critical to manage our emotional energy and also to project that positivity. And no better time than right now to practice our positivity in the face of negativity. Number 4 is social leadership. How do we build our rings of influence and make sure we're investing in all of our relationships, taking that time to reach out and, family, friends, acquaintances, work relationships, all those things. And then the last one is spiritual leadership. How do we get outside of ourselves? How do we recognize and have perspective? There's a bigger world than just us. Our problems are not the only problems in the world. And we kind of take a step outside of our problems and look back in. It enables us to better manage and handle them. So that is what we talked about last time. That's all about how we lead ourselves.
Right. And that's so important because as we discuss this during this time, how to lead others, obviously you have to be able to lead yourself effectively if you hope to lead others, right? And so I imagine you get approached all the time by business leaders to speak. What's the number one question that they have for you?
Oh, every single time it is, hey, Jay, I know you were a Navy SEAL. I know you led people in combat. You've run your own business. Hey, help me to be a better leader of my team. Can you give me advice real quick on how I can be a better leader of my team? My first question every time is, how do you lead yourself? So leading yourself is by far the number one. If you get off track, if your team is off track, even right now in this pandemic, it's a great example. Your ability to lead yourself and project positivity, your ability to build structure, your ability to build a routine, those are the things that the people who follow you are naturally going to want to follow and emulate even more. So anytime things get off track in my own life, in my own business, I always go back to that rule number 1. Rule number 2 then gets into how do we lead others? And how we lead others doesn't have anything to do, it has much less to do with the words coming out of your mouth and a lot more to do with everything you put in place prior. So it is the guidance, it is the motivation, it is the inspiration, it is reaching out to them, it is providing them the tools they need to be successful. And sometimes as leaders, we naturally assume people are just going to get things done, but sometimes they don't know, or sometimes they're lost, or there's adversity. And that's where we have those touch points and our ability to lead others, where we find out what their problems are, that active communication.
So a lot of what we're talking about, obviously, is leading through crisis, right? We started off by discussing identifying that crisis or that ambush, getting away from it. We've talked about how to lead yourself. We continue to talk about that because it dovetails very much with leading others, which is what we're talking about today. So what is the what's the number one goal for a leader when they encounter a crisis?
I'd say the number one goal is to you've got to motivate and inspire your team. You've got to provide hope. So I would tell you your first goal is take a step back and calm yourself, because in a crisis, there's a natural sense of urgency. All of us get caught up in the frenzy and the energy of this emergency. And the first thing to do is just take that step back, realize that, I'll tell you, I have a pretty high bar when it comes to massive crisis or emergency. My bar is anybody shooting at me and is anybody dying? If it doesn't meet those two criteria, then you have a little bit of time and you can take a breath. So I encourage you to use that analogy. It is fairly extreme, but very rarely ever in life, especially in business, is there something that literally is seconds away from catastrophe. Right. Usually we at least have several hours to work with. And with several hours, there's a chance to take that breath, to calm yourself. Maybe as a leader, you need to step away for a couple of minutes, gather your thoughts. We have something called, let the battlefield develop. So get a good assessment of what's going on, and now come back to your team and you're ready to lead. So the next thing now gets into how do we guide our team? And the reality is we got to get everybody moving in the same direction at once. This is one of the most critical things, because oftentimes in an emergency, people are like, they just start doing, there's a natural sense to be a little frenetic in our activity, and everybody's trying to do what they think is best. And we may be all going in 6 different directions at once, and those directions are running counter to where we really need to go. So this is where the leader needs to bring people together. We need to make sure that we know where we really need to go based off what's going on, and then provide the guidance to get everybody moving in the same direction. I talk about in Overcome book, we got to get everybody to get their head under the boat and move that boat in the right direction.
So go ahead, explain what you mean when you say get your head under the boat, because most people may be scratching their head wondering what does that mean?
So get your head under the boat really goes back to the basic levels of teamwork within the SEAL teams. And if I took all of you right now and I teleported you out to SEAL training, and they actually are still conducting SEAL training now, one of the things we do at SEAL training is we use these small rubber boats, and they're called inflatable boat smalls. They weigh about 300 pounds, and they're big enough to fit 7 men. And we use them to either row out of the waves to get out and do small beach reconnaissance type stuff, or oftentimes we carry them on top of their head. The reality is, why are they used? They're used because they're a great tool to bring people together as a team. Everything you have to do to move this boat around has to be coordinated as a team. So if we pick this boat up off the ground and we bring it up to our shoulder and we put it on our head, everybody has to be in unison, because if the left side picks up the boat before the right side, the boat's going to be canted. One of the other big things you do is you carry this boat around on your head almost everywhere you go around the Buds and base there in Coronado, California. And if you were to watch students carry these boats around, after a long period of time, they get water in them, they get sand in them. So that 300 pounds adds up to 400 pounds. And it's a lot of weight to carry on your head. It hurts, your neck hurts. And oftentimes people will try and relieve the pressure off their head by taking their head out from underneath the boat. So the number one thing you will hear over and over again, if you were out at SEAL training, watching a class go through training, you would hear, get your head under the boat. You'll hear it over and over again. Yeah. And the bottom line is this, that as a team, it's critical that everybody has their head under the boat. One of the interesting things that's happened, it's like physics, is if you see an individual in the back right corner take his head out from underneath the boat, there is a natural tendency for the weight now to shift to the exact opposite area, that front left corner. So now the guy on the front left corner is kind of crunched down because that weight redistribution has happened. It's no different in a team. And in a crisis, it's even more important because everybody's working hard and everybody needs to have their head under the boat. So this is where the leader is critical in telling everyone, this is where we need to go. Here's how we need to get there. And then it's critical for our team members to make sure they got their head under the boat and they're helping to carry the weight through that crisis.
Communicating. So part of making sure everybody's pulling their weight and got their head under the boat is making sure that everybody understands the vision, right? You have to, as a leader, you have to communicate the shared vision amongst the whole team, right? The mission.
That's right. And so go ahead, Vince.
Oh no, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's critical, and that's where it gets important to, sometimes in combat, sometimes there comes a period of time where as a leader, you don't have the time to convey why you're doing what you're doing, because literally seconds matter. Mm-hmm. But most of the time in a business environment, we do have the ability to say, hey guys, this is why we're doing this. And you may or may not agree with it, but at least as a leader, it's good to try and convince. And sometimes we have to accept, well, they are the leader. And maybe they have information that I don't have. They've tried to coordinate it. At the end of the day, we all got to, especially in a crisis, we got to accept that communication and be able to execute it for us to move in the right direction.
Yeah, and I would imagine there's a few things that kind of build that equity within a team for that leader. So I know a lot of times you talk about having the time to explain the why, right? And I think if you have a team and you take the time to explain the why when you can, and then you also have a track record that when you do execute on a plan, it's successful, or you're humble and you go, I screwed that one up, and this is how we're going to fix it, right? The transparency, the track record, it all builds equity amongst your team for those times when you don't have time. You don't have time to explain why. You just need them to do it. And hopefully by then they're trusting you, and they know that that's not always the way it is, but they can trust and they can move forward when you do have to do that, right?
Vince, you're spot on. I often talk about that leadership and your ability to lead others is built on credibility, and credibility is earned over time. Credibility is the currency of leadership. And you're spot on. It is our ability to be a humble servant leader. It's our ability to lead and make good decisions. It's our ability to accept ownership when we make bad decisions. It's our ability to recognize our amazing team members when they do great things, and also recognize that when things go wrong as a leader, we own part of that. And that gets into a whole nother level of something we call extreme ownership. But at the end of the day, that credibility is built. So just like Vince said, when you're in a crisis and you don't have time to really explain why, your team members go, you know what, man, Vince has always been behind us. Vince has always supported us. He's always done everything he can to take care of the team. So we may not have time to understand why, and I might not even agree with it, but I believe in him. So let's go.
Yeah, super important. Now, once you've established a shared mission, you talk about coordinated movement. So it's one thing to say, here's what we're doing, here's the direction, here's how we're getting out of this, here's how we're going to overcome whatever it is. But then it's important to, as you point out, not just to communicate a shared vision and then everybody goes off and does their version of how to execute it, but also to make sure that you've got synchronized movement. So explain how you learned that in the military, explain how that plays out in business.
Yeah, it plays out with any team, military team, organization, company, and it plays out in several different ways. I mean, we have to understand what is the overarching thing that we are trying to accomplish, and we call that the main effort. The United States Army is actually the ones who coined this phrase, and they talk about main effort and supporting effort. So the main effort is the overall objective. It is the high level strategic objective we're trying to accomplish. If you look at, I'm a big football fan. So if you look at football, what is the overall strategic objective? Well, it's for the team to win. I mean, nobody in sports, especially at a professional or college level, nobody's going to the game and like, man, let's win. Let's throw this away. The goal is to win. And then underneath it, we have our supporting efforts. We have the coaching staff, we have offense, defense. From there, it starts breaking down into offensive line, defensive line, secondaries, receivers, backs, quarterbacks, all that. It's no different in business or teams. We have that main effort, which is what we're trying to accomplish. And then we have the supporting efforts. Where things start to get off track, if you don't have good communication, if you're not constantly making sure that people are moving in that same direction, is when the supporting efforts goals are not in alignment with the main effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a good example of this. So when I was getting put back together in the hospital, I had multiple teams of doctors that were working on me. I had orthopedic surgeons, I had ear, nose, and throat surgeons, I had eye surgeons, I had infectious disease surgeons. I had just a slew of doctors working on me, plastic surgeons. And obviously, the main effort was to put Jason Redman back together to the best means possible, to give me the best possible outcome by the time they all finished. And the supporting efforts all had different pieces of the puzzle. So the orthopedic surgeons were repairing my arm and damage to my body. Ear, nose, and throat were figuring out how to rebuild my nose. The eye doctor was rebuilding my orbit. Infectious disease was fighting these nasty infections I had. And all of them wanted to work together. It was like building a house or a big project you're managing. The different pieces come together. Well, if one part of the team is not effectively working towards that final goal and they're only focused on their small piece of the pie, it can create ripple effects that now start to disrupt that main effort. And that's exactly what happened. I knew from special operations experience, when you're working with a lot of different teams, how important it is to get everybody together and talk about the different moving parts and what happens when they're going to do something, if they're going to do something, how they communicate to everybody else, so we make sure we can adjust based off what they're doing in the timeline. And I was trying to do the same things with the surgical teams. And there was one team, the ear, nose, and throat team, who was not interested in participating in those meetings. They kept telling us, hey, we know what we need to do. We don't need to be there. When it's our turn, we'll take care of it. And I kept explaining to them, hey, I need you guys involved in this process. We are building blocks. And guess what? This guy, I'm the guinea pig. Like, your building blocks are me. They're my future. Like, I want you in here so that we can talk about any problems. And they fought against it. And I finally ended up firing them. I found out, even within the military, I can fire a medical team, which, boy, they did not like. That created all kinds of disruption. But that was a perfect example of the supporting effort not being in aligned with the main effort. And it's the same in a company. If sales or marketing or operations or logistics is not in alignment with the main effort of that company, that supporting effort, that means you got people moving in different directions, and that's going to create disruption, and that's not going to allow you to accomplish what that main effort is, which for most companies is to be profitable and successful.
Yeah, no, that's so valuable, because I think sometimes as leaders, we assume everybody understands what the mission is, and so I heard it said once that the biggest tragedy in communication is assuming that it's already happened, right? So you can't assume as a business leader that everybody understands what the mission is and your strategy, your vision for getting it done. So important to make sure that's done. Now, what happens if, let's say during a crisis, during an ambush, as a leader, you make a decision and it turns out poorly? I mean, we talked about humility a few seconds ago. And so now you've damaged your credibility with your team, because that blew back on you. Now, how do you recover? How do you come back from that? Whether it's a small decision or a project that backfired, or it's a big one that backfired in a big way. Now you've got to regain some ground with your team. So talk about that.
Well, I think step one is you own it. That's going to be one of the biggest things. I mean, it goes back to when I talk in my REACT methodology, when we have a life ambush, crisis, failure, whatever it is, step one are recognize you're in a crisis and accept it. As a leader, we're going to make mistakes. And oftentimes, even if it's somebody within your team that's made a mistake, we talk about extreme ownership. Extreme ownership is 90% of the time when someone within your team makes a mistake, it ends up coming back on the leader in some capacity. Did we not give them the right guidance, the right resources? Did we let something slip? So at the end of the day, owning it is probably the very number one thing that we can do, and communicating that. Number two is don't allow a failure to degrade your opinion and abilities of your leadership. I mean, we are all human. It doesn't matter. I don't care who you are, from the highest levels of leadership within the military, within companies, everybody makes mistakes. But I tell you what, your credibility as a leader is built on your ability to own that mistake and then how you react coming out of it, how you carry yourself. And one of the biggest things you can do is stay true to what you believe in, stay true to your values and your beliefs, and then drive forward from there. Is it something that can be salvageable? If it's something that can be salvageable, then we figure out, hey, this mistake happened, this problem happened, this is how I'm going to fix it, and communicate that to everybody. Or can it not be salvageable? Then, it's a failure breaking point, and we figure out how to move forward from there. In Overcome, I was really fortunate to interview some amazing individuals who had encountered some fairly large failures in their lives. One of those individuals was General Stan Mcchrystal. And General Mcchrystal was, he was my boss in special operations. And then he went on to lead all the forces in Afghanistan, 4-star general in charge of the war, reporting directly to President Obama.
He's the make your bed. The guy.
No, that's Admiral McCraven.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
okay.
no, you're good. Admiral McCraven, I also got to work for, an amazing individual. He was in charge of the Bin Laden raid.
Okay.
General Mcchrystal was in charge of all forces in Afghanistan. 2010, 2011 timeframe.
Mm-hmm.
And General Mcchrystal was an amazing leader, phenomenal combat leader, phenomenal leader of special operations and later within the Army. And really, in my opinion, probably was going to be the next select for chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And he had some individuals on his team that said some negative things about the current administration, the Obama administration. And there happened to be a Rolling Stones reporter that was around when they were said. And that individual wrote a very negative story about General Mcchrystal and his team, which led General Mcchrystal to have to go to the president and resign after 36 years in the military as this incredibly well-respected leader. So what did he do? Number one, he owned it. He said, you know what? I made this mistake. Obviously, I didn't provide the right guidance. I didn't provide the right, right and left limits to my staff on what they should be saying or not saying. And obviously, this is my fault. And after that, then he looked at, can it be salvageable? Unfortunately not. He had to resign and leave the military. And he really struggled with that decision. I mean, here he was. I mean, this was a pretty major failure. It was a pretty hard, stop in his life. But he knew who he was, and he knew that he was a leader, and he knew what his values stood for. So he didn't allow it to stop him and sit on the X forever. He said, you know what, I have a lot more to give. And he created the Mcchrystal Group, and now he's consulting companies all over the world on leadership and how to do things. Incredibly successful, well-respected guy. So this is how you stay true to yourself. Don't lose yourself in failure and mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. There's 2 guarantees in life. You're going to die. We can't change that. And you're going to make some mistakes along the way. Once we come to grips with those 2 things and you can navigate forward, stay true to yourself, you're going to do well and set that example on how you can lead others.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So, and you talk about the leader as the chief communicator. And the importance. Now, this sounds really elementary, but I want you to talk about you had a communication. I don't know if I call it failure. You call it, but you were leading a team, and you talk about in your books that you had given a couple of people on your team to go check out a couple people, and you kind of understood that you communicated one thing, so do you know the story I'm talking about?
I do. So this was a situation in Iraq where we were taking down a target, and it was a pretty complicated target. It was a very large compound. There were multiple structures of buildings. We were split up into 3 teams. I was leading a team. Not only did we have American SEALs, we also had Iraqi special forces guys that were part of the mission. As my team moved up to our initial building that we were taking down, we were walking by another house about 70 yards away, and there happened to be some people sleeping outside of that house, which is common in Iraq. In the summer, it's very hot. Most of them don't have air conditioning, so oftentimes they sleep outside. And I told my team leader, let's push some people over there to guard these individuals, make sure they're not enemy fighters, hold watch on them while we continue to move up and take down our other house. And I assumed wrongly, and what I had initially conveyed was put 2 guys over there. They ended up putting 3. I did not stop to verify this. So this is a breakdown in communication on my end. I should have made sure, that he reported back to me and said, hey, I'm going to put 2 Iraqi scouts over there to work, to cover these guys. And then we're going to fall back in to take down the target. So we went up, we took down our target, turned into a huge firefight. There were a lot of bad guys on this house. And it was a messy situation. Well, we needed to call in a fire mission. One of the biggest things I needed whenever we're going to do that is I needed a head count of all our forces, so we make sure we don't drop bombs on friendly forces, on my Iraqis or my American SEALs. And I could not get a good head count. I kept counting all of our guys and then 2 guys back at the other house, and I kept being 1 short. I kept moving around this target in the middle of this firefight to figure out where was this missing man. And finally, at one point, I literally had to tell my guys, running through the middle of this firefight back to this house to find this 3rd guy. So it was a breakdown in communication that had occurred. So it's really critical that when we communicate, there's active communication. And then there is getting them to respond back to you, hey, I understand, and this is what I'm going to do. So we make sure there's no breakdowns in communication. So that's an immediate. And then follow-on communication. I heard an interesting fact the other day, and I really liked it, that it takes, on average, 7 times if you've made a change for that change to sink in. So that means you're going to need to repeat yourself 7 times before it really sinks in. Now, in a crisis situation, obviously, if it's a small thing, it can be executed immediately. But if it's a larger change within an organization, maybe you're changing the way you do things, maybe you're changing some of the, the direction you're going, and there's, multiple steps, that's where we need to continue to articulate that message. And going back to what Vince said earlier, assuming that just because you put it out one time, everybody's going to understand and implement it is a bad call as a leader. You want to continue to reinforce it, and you want to continue to, to provide that guidance and direction.
Yeah. So we're moving into the last topic, but before we do, I just want to, quickly recap. When your team has a shared vision, a clearly communicated, simple plan, it can deliver the results you've been pursuing for years, right? I mean, you said that in your book.
Absolutely. I don't know what it is about humans. We want to make things so complicated. So the simpler you can make things, the better it is. Layers of too many processes, too much structure, too many widgets, oftentimes just complicate things and make it more difficult. I mean, I think you guys have all heard the saying, we use it in the SEAL teams a lot, KISS, the acronym KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
If something's getting too complicated, take a step back, especially when we're giving guidance and direction. The less steps we have, the higher the chances of success.
Yeah, absolutely. So finally, the final topic for this conversation is about executing and staying the course, right? You've defined a plan. You've got everybody on board. All the heads are under the boat. You've communicated, but now all that is great, but it's worthless if you don't execute, and it's a waste of energy if you don't stay the course, right?
Absolutely. And this gets into something even a little bit of higher level. If you are a good leader, if you've provided good guidance, you've provided the right motivation, inspiration, and you've provided the right resources, now this all comes down to one key word, and it resonates very well with credibility. That word is trust. And it flows both ways. So if you are a good leader and you've done all the things you need to do, guess what? Your people are going to trust you. So we talked about that. If I provide guidance in an emergency, I'm going to follow that individual. That's built on trust. There's the reverse now. You've got to trust your people to execute. Don't be a micromanager. If you want to stay the course, if you want to get things done quickly, provide people the right guidance, provide them the right resources, recognize that you've done your job motivating and inspiring them, and then let them go out and do what they do, man. You've got amazingly talented people. They want to do well. Let them do it. So many leaders hinder progress and get things off course because they're micromanaging so much. They've provided the guidance and they want to know every little step that's happening. Or they may see, oh, well, John or Jill is not doing this exactly like I'd do it, so I want to step in. Let them do it. If it is accomplishing the end result and it is not breaking any rules or processes, their mind may work a little differently. At the end of the day, it is about getting it done. And as long as everybody's moving in the right direction, as long as they're moving towards that main effort, that's what it's about. So we call this decentralized command in the military. We want to push our leadership decision-making down to the lowest levels, provide them the guidance, provide them the resources, provide them the budget, training, motivation, inspiration, all of that, and let them go out and make those decisions to get things done. It's going to make your organization better. It's going to make you more successful, and it's going to build greater trust.
Yeah, outstanding. I can't help but notice and point out how much of this, how much of what you just said is very much in line with parenting. I mean, you train, you provide training, you provide instruction, you provide structure and boundaries, and then there comes a day where you have to launch, and you're still there. It's the decentralized authority, but you're there as a resource to come back. But you've hopefully instilled the decision making necessary to launch well. Same, and obviously with the community that we're talking to right now, it's important to understand that in your business, right? That if you've done your job well, then you should be able to leave, really, right? You should be. If you need to go on vacation, the world should not stop when you take a week off, right? Your business should run really well. You should come back and scratch your head and go, wow, that ran really well. And obviously things come up and problems are solved or maybe they're put on hold till you get back. But giving your team the authority, I used to tell a team of people that worked for me, look, I want you to make new mistakes. And they would go, what? I go, look, if you're not making new mistakes, then you're not trying hard enough. If you're making the same mistakes, that's a different conversation. But yeah, if you're making new mistakes, that means you're trying. You're constantly trying and
challenging your beliefs.
Challenging your beliefs and giving them the power to like you said, you set up those parameters and then you let them go. Transparent. If I'm being transparent, it's where I struggle. It's where I struggle as a parent. It's where I struggle as a leader is when I see something. You said something earlier, like they may not do it exactly the way you do it. I look at things a lot of times and I'm like, yeah, but I do it a specific way because I think it's the best way to be done, And so, but it's empowering and it's really helpful growth for the team if you do lay off and let them do it. As long as they're within those boundaries, they're doing it. They'll feel proud of it. They'll feel more accomplished by it. And ultimately, that's what you want. You don't want a robot, right?
Absolutely. I mean, people like to be successful. People like to figure things out. They like to get that end state. So, if you go from A to C and they go from, your destination is E and they go from, A to C and then D to E and, they skip a step, but it doesn't matter. That step is irrelevant in the process. As long as we're, doing it, then it doesn't matter. Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, and I love your analogy with the kids. Leadership is leadership, whether it's with your kids, whether it's with a team, whether it's with your company. At the end of the day, it's a lot, giving them the guidance and letting them get out there. I've told my kids from, by the time they were young teenagers, I said, it's my job to get you out in the world to be a successful adult. And my biggest thing is I want to teach you the difference between right and wrong and how to make decisions that are good for you. I said, when you were a baby, I had to protect you from killing yourself. I had to protect you from falling in the pool and drowning or going out into the street because you don't have an awareness of that yet. As an adult, those decisions get a little more nuanced. I told my teenagers, I said, I now need to protect you, or at least hopefully lay the groundwork that you don't do the things that create long-term impact on your life,
Right.
that you're not doing illegal drugs, that you're not breaking the law, that you're not, getting pregnant or whatever it is. That could have massive long-term impact on your life. But at the end of the day, you give them the guidance, you motivate, you inspire, you give them the resources, and then you send them out there and you accept that they're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
As long as the mistakes aren't so grave that, then at that point you got to step in.
Yeah. Decisions, whether you're in business or you're a parent or just you look at the decisions on your personal life, they have consequences. And so you make good decisions as a leader, as a person, as a parent, then your consequences should be good, right? Most of the time they are. You make good decisions and then you have good outcomes. You make bad decisions, you have bad outcomes. And so it's the same thing. And I've actually reversed that, flipped it in conversations and about parenting. So I've often said, I've never been a big fan of parenting by exposure, right? Like I'm not going to toss my 8-year-old the keys to the car and go, hey, go learn how to drive, right? I've always pointed to kind of the military. I said, look, the military, they take people, they put them in a controlled environment, and they don't just, you don't sign up and they hand you a rifle and send you out in the field, right? They put you in a very controlled environment to teach you and equip you with the tools and the skills that you need so that you can act well when you do get out into combat. And I think some people take this the wrong way, but I look at parenting very much the same way, right? You put your children in a controlled environment where you can teach them and equip them so that when they do launch, they are equipped. They know how to make good decisions and bad decisions. Now, whether they do or they don't is on them. I know somebody, I don't know them personally. I read in a book once that said that good parenting is not about what the child does. It's about what the parent does, right? So and that could be said about leadership. A good leadership is not always about what the employee does. It's about what the leader does. And if you lead well, one of the quotes in your book is, if you want people to follow you, you have to give them a reason, right? And with that as kind of a final thought, I want you to comment on that, but I also want to invite anybody listening, if you have questions, to get them in before we end.
It comes back to the rules of leadership. Rule number 1 is lead yourself, and it's no different in parenting. I tell people, and sometimes people are offended by this, if you as a parent don't take care of yourself, whether it's physically, if you have poor nutrition, any of these things, there is almost an 80% likelihood your kids will follow in exactly the same footsteps as you. Why? Because we learn by watching others. That is literally leadership by example. So rule number 1, lead yourself. Lead yourself. If you are doing a good job leading yourself in your business, you have a much higher probability that your team members are going to be better. Same thing with parenting. And then rule number 2, if you're effectively leading yourself, now it gets a little more nuanced in how we lead others, providing them the right guidance, providing them the communication on a regular basis, reminding them this is where we're going. If there's a change, making sure we're letting them know of the change. And remember, 7 times that we've got to continue to communicate to reinforce that change. And that'll make the difference. Get everybody's head under the boat, get them moving in the right direction, make sure they know what that main effort is, praise them for their supporting effort, and trust them. Push that leadership decision making down.
Yeah, so great. Good stuff. Jason, I want to thank you again for talking with us today. I know that everybody listening is benefiting from this. It's really great stuff. Appreciate your time. Look forward to the next time. I've been really enjoying these interviews and look forward to talking to you again soon. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Vince, thank you. And everyone, thank you. I appreciate all the comments out there. Sandy Blaylock, thank you. Greg, Marley's, Jenny, Billy, East Brunswick Foreign and Domestic, Karen Smith. So thank you to all of you. And Vince, always, man, thanks for having me on.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Yeah, you guys too.